Hey Brewvians, welcome to another Brew Day video. My name is Librex, and I will be taking you through as we perform a Blood Rite. Blood Rite is clearly styled after Bloodseeker. That is the hero companion that goes with this beer. And it was one of the first beers that I really sat down and tried to think about and designed. The reason being is that there are some heroes in Dota that are pretty abstract. Their concepts don't translate very well into a beer. Bloodseeker was one that it was going to be more than just a beginner beer, an easy one, a no-brainer recipe or ingredient or anything like that. So I had to sit down and really give it some thought. Bloodseeker, in his lore, there wasn't a lot to go on. He's a hound of the Flayed Ones, the Flayed Twins, and his entire existence depends on just seeking out blood. He's just here to get blood. He needs to drink a monumental amount of blood, so we're going to have to incorporate blood into this beer for this hero. There's no other way. There's nothing really else to go on. I toyed playing maybe with like a coppery taste or something like that, like blood, or high iron content or anything like that. But it ended up just being, and this was designed about 4 years ago. So this is before a lot of the blood orange beers that we're starting to see now. And that was the logical place that we ended up at, is a blood orange has a really deep red color. Oranges can go really well into either an IPA or a wit beer, like your Blue Moon uses orange and citrus. We decided to go with the wit beer because I felt like the hops of an IPA is going to be too overpowering for this. I really want to try and showcase the blood in the blood orange. So that means that a wit beer is going to be a great showcase for this kind of flavor. I went with a very, very light grain bill. I don't want to do anything gimmicky like add dye or a really staining red is like beets or something like that. But that doesn't work well. So we're going to try and incorporate the color into the color into the beer, the color of red into the beer as much as we can. We tried this before in our extract one using Red X as a malt. It's a malt that'll give a little more copper color. Obviously, it's just shades of brown that you get out of beer and brewing. Nothing really red-ish. So anything named red is more going to be like a little copperish. And that didn't go so well at all. It was not the color that we wanted. The flavors were all there, but it just wasn't what we were looking for. So that being said, how we're going to incorporate the blood orange is, I don't want to boil it because that develops a lot of that really develops the pectin that's in citrus fruits, and you get a lot of them, and that's something that we need to worry about. So we're using blood orange, so we're going to get a lot of pectin no matter what we do. And that can cause a really hazy beer. And I want to clear out as much of that as I can, have a real transparent beer. That way, the little bits of red that we get from the blood orange, as you can see here, I've juiced. This was 4 bags of blood oranges. They were small ones, and I didn't get as much as I wanted, but we've got about 1/4 of a gallon here, 4 cups of blood orange juice. We're going to put that in the end of the boil. I don't want to boil it too much, but I do want it to be hot enough to sterilize. That way we don't develop some off flavors. And I've already spiked it with this here. This is going to be a pectic enzyme. That's going to break down all the pectin, all the cell walls, any of the sort of pulp that's in there. It'll break it down and remove all the pectins, or break down all the pectins. That way we should get a nice clear beer, so it's not all hazy like you would normally get with pectin. All right, the other thing we need to worry about when we're working with citrus juice is that it is very acidic, and that's going to drop the pH. So we've got ourselves some calcium carbonate. That is just going to up the pH of our mash so that it's not too low. And so we're actually really getting into some of the brewing science in this one, a little bit of water chemistry and stuff like that, which is not something I'm generally worried about, but it is a big concern using this. So we've got some test strips as well. We'll test our mash, make sure we bring it up. It's doubly important because a wit beer wants a little bit higher of a pH than you would normally have at about like 5.5 pH. But we're adding the citric acid and all the citrus, so that is going to drop it quite a lot. So we need to be able to correct that. So that covers most of the incorporation of the hero. We're going to use blood oranges to really symbolize the way that Bloodseeker needs to drink lots and lots of blood. That is going to be our blood analogous material. We're going to incorporate it into our beer, and we're going to should have a nice blood red or very reddish looking beer at the end that Bloodseeker himself could just be draining down and staying alive. So let's get our water up to temp. While that water's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and just start prepping all of my spices. A wit beer is going to have a little bit of spice in it, or it's a spiced beer. When I say spice, what I've got here is about an ounce of coriander seed, we've got some paradise seed, and then we've got the zest from our blood oranges as well. I got a pretty good amount, about a 1/4 ounce or so, that we should be able to throw into our boil bag, and that will go in our boil to impart all those nice flavors into the beer. Before those go into the boil, we're going to want to give them a slight crush. Now, for this beer, there was no consideration made for the hop profile. A wit beer is not going to have much of a hop profile, so there wasn't a lot of area to play with it. There are some hops that have a citrusy aroma or taste to them, but they tend to be on the bitter side and are much more suited for an IPA. So we just went with some standard hops for this style, a German Hersbrucker and a Saz hop. They will go in pretty much at the usual times of the boil. Nothing special going on with the hops. Our water is just about up to temp, so let's get these grains in. We're all done with the mash, so let's get those grains out, washed out, and start the boil. I forgot to turn on my new external microphone for the camera, so enjoy this shitty dub. At this point, we're up to boiling, and we're going to add our first set of starting hops. We have about 15 minutes left in the boil, so let's add the last bit of hops and our spices, and when that's done, we'll be able to send it through our counterflow wort chiller here and get it down to temperature. Then we'll be able to add our yeast, and that'll be pretty much everything. Perfect. That's about everything for this brew day. We're going to keep this in primary fermentation for pretty much as long as it takes. This beer tends to have a lot of extra sugars from all the blood oranges, and then it'll be off to secondary to develop some flavors. Also, at this point, I can't remember what I'm talking about, so I'm just going to note I didn't add the calcium carbonate in the mash because the blood oranges weren't in there, so it didn't drop the pH and it wasn't necessary. I also didn't add the blood orange juice to the boil. I ended up adding that during the primary fermentation. You can also do it in secondary. It did kind of get the fermentation to stick, so I did have to add some calcium carbonate at that point. Brewvians, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check the notification bell for updates on future videos, or you can just follow us on Twitter at DotaBrews. This has been Wivrex with DotaBrews, and have yourself a wonderful night.